So, imagine you're looking at a massive 18-wheeler flying down the highway.
Right.
And you realize you aren't just looking at a vehicle moving freight. You're actually looking at, like, a high-speed rolling warehouse.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's designed specifically to exploit this crazy loophole in real estate and labor costs. I mean, it completely flips how you view the highway.
That really does.
So today, welcome to the Deep Dive. We are unpacking the absolute bedrock of the global supply chain, which is transportation fundamentals.
The big one.
Yeah, the big one. We're pulling our insights today from the APS Certified in Logistics, Transportation and Distribution, or CLTD learning system.
Right, specifically focusing on Module 6, Section A.
Yes. And our mission today is to really understand this intricate, high-stakes chess game happening behind the scenes to get a product to your doorstep. Because, well, transportation is by far the single largest expenditure in logistics.
Oh, by a mile. It is the largest expense. But, it's also the primary mechanism for competitive growth. We tend to view transportation as just this utilitarian function, right? Like just moving a box from point A to point B.
Yeah, just shipping stuff.
Exactly. But for supply chain professionals, it's a highly strategic tool. I mean, it allows companies to cross geographic lines, leverage global economies for scale, and, fundamentally alter the pricing dynamics of entire markets.
Wow.
If you can master the transportation network, you basically dictate the terms of competition.
Okay, let's interrogate that idea a bit by looking at what transportation actually does on a functional level.
Sure.
Because the APS text breaks it down into two main capabilities, which are movement and storage.
Right. Movement and storage.
Now, movement is self-evident, right? We understand transit times, getting things to the customer. But I got to be honest, classifying a moving truck as a storage facility, that just seems super counterintuitive to me.
That sounds a little crazy at first, yeah.
Right. Like leaving valuable product just sitting inside a trailer in some random drop lot sounds like a massive inventory tracking nightmare.
Oh, for sure.
Not to mention like a serious theft risk.
Yeah.
So how do logistics managers even justify tying up a revenue-generating vehicle just to use it as a temporary shed?
Well, you have to look at the alternative, really. Think about the physical physics and the labor costs associated with a traditional warehouse.
Okay.
When a truck arrives at a facility, you have to pay a team to unload it, right? You pay for the forklift fuel, you pay to physically move those pallets onto racks.
Right, all that overhead.
Exactly. You're paying for the climate control, the square footage of that building, and then like a few days later, you have to pay another team to pick those exact same pallets off the rack, stage them, and load them onto a completely different truck.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the labor of double handling that freight has to be astronomical.
It's massive. So if a shipment is destined for its final customer in, say, 3 days, you just bypass the warehouse entirely.
You just leave it in the truck.
Precisely. You leave the goods in the trailer, effectively turning the vehicle into in-transit storage. You completely eliminate the middleman of the warehouse shelf.
That's brilliant. But my point about tying up a revenue-generating vehicle, this still seems like a catch, right?
Oh. It is the critical catch. You are playing a very dangerous game with demurrage and detention fees.
Okay, break this down for me.
So demurrage applies to cargo left at a terminal beyond its allotted free time, whereas detention is a penalty for holding on to the actual equipment.
Like keeping a driver's trailer tied up at your loading dock.
Exactly. The carriers will charge really punitive rates if you hold their assets past a strict grace period. Because, you're disrupting their asset utilization.
Right. They want their truck back on the road making money.
Yes. And furthermore, if a company is using its own private fleet for storage, the opportunity cost is immense there, too. Every day that trailer is parked is a day it isn't hauling a new load.
So it becomes this really delicate balancing act, right? Avoiding warehouse labor costs without triggering catastrophic detention fees.
Exactly. But when a company actually nails that balance, the results are just staggering.
Right. And the text gives this fascinating case study about a German clock manufacturer that really illustrates this.
Yes, the clock example.
So a manufacturer in Germany produces a clock for 150 euros, and a Portuguese manufacturer produces a clock of the exact same quality locally for 175 euros.
Right.
But because the German company has relentlessly optimized its routing, its consolidation, and that in-transit storage we just talked about, they can ship that clock all the way to Portugal for a mere €10 delivery fee.
which is incredible.
It is. So the German clock lands at 160 euros total.
Right, which means the German firm just completely undercuts the local Portuguese manufacturer in their own backyard.
Yeah, they beat them by 15 euros.
Exactly. That €10 delivery fee isn't just a shipping charge. I mean, it is the physical manifestation of market dominance.
Oh, I like how you phrase that.
Well, it's true. The German company uses transportation to access lower-priced raw materials, scale their production volume, and basically project their market power across international borders.
But delivering on that 10 euro fee, that requires a fiercely optimized physical infrastructure, right? Specifically focusing on where the freight is consolidated.
Yes, absolutely. The handoffs are everything.
Which takes us right into the architecture of the network itself, which are the terminals.
Right.
If the trucks are the rolling warehouses, the terminals are basically the sorting rooms that prevent the whole system from collapsing into chaos.
A great way to look at it.
The text categorizes a few specific types, starting with PUD terminals, which stands for Pickup and Delivery Terminals.
Right, PUDs.
These handle local consolidation and dispersion. And the key operational strategy here is something called the milk run. I love this concept.
The milk run is essentially a masterclass in regional efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, from what I read, it's basically freight carpooling, right?
Exactly. Instead of waiting for a supplier to produce enough inventory to fill an entire 53-foot trailer, which, ties up capital and extends lead times, a single truck just operates on a continuous scheduled circuit.
Right, so let's say you have a factory that needs raw materials from 3 different local suppliers every day.
Okay.
Rather than dispatching 3 separate trucks from 3 separate suppliers, a single truck leaves the PUD terminal. It stops at supplier A, grabs a third of the trailer's capacity,
Yep.
moves to supplier B, grabs the next third, hits supplier C, fills the trailer, and delivers the consolidated load to the factory. Boom! 1 truck instead of 3.
And the strategic value of that circuit goes way beyond just saving diesel fuel or having fewer drivers on payroll.
Oh, really? How so?
It synchronizes the inbound supply chain with just-in-time manufacturing principles. Because you're doing frequent, smaller drop-offs, the receiving factory doesn't need to hold these massive buffer inventories.
Oh, that makes sense. You don't need a huge warehouse if the truck is always bringing just what you need today.
Exactly. You dramatically reduce the average inventory levels that everyone in the supply chain has to carry, which frees up working capital across the board.
Okay, so that handles the regional density problem. But when that Portuguese-bound clock needs to move across the continent, local milk runs aren't going to cut it.
No, they won't. That's when you need break bulk terminals.
Right. This is the classic hub-and-spoke model. And it's designed to solve the physical challenge of less than truckload, or LTL, shipping.
Yes, LTL is tricky.
Because if you only have 2 pallets of clocks, you can't afford to hire an entire dedicated truck for a cross-border run.
Right, and neither can the hundreds of other companies shipping small quantities. So all those local PUD terminals feed their partially full trucks into a massive centralized break bulk terminal.
And the logistical challenge there has to be staggering, right?
Yeah, it's wild. Facility managers have to unload thousands of disparate shipments from competing companies, sort them by geographic destination, and then recombine them to maximize every cubic inch of outbound trailers heading to specific regions.
It's literally just playing Tetris with freight.
That's exactly what it is. And it's an incredibly labor-intensive process, but mathematically, it's the only way to achieve the economies of scale necessary for that €10 delivery fee.
So we're talking about colossal facilities running 24/7 just to play this Tetris game. But there's another type of terminal mentioned in the text that operates on a completely different logic.
Ah, the relay terminal.
Yes, the relay terminal. And the fascinating thing about this one is that the freight is never actually touched. No pallets are sorted, no boxes are unloaded, nothing.
Right, because relay terminals exist almost entirely to solve a biological limitation, one that's highly regulated by the government.
Human endurance.
Exactly, human endurance. Commercial truck drivers are strictly governed by hours of service regulations to prevent fatal accidents caused by fatigue.
Which is totally understandable.
Of course. In the United States, for instance, a driver is capped at 11 hours of driving time before a mandatory rest period is triggered.
But a long-haul route connecting major commercial hubs obviously takes much longer than 11 hours. And you can't just have a truck carrying highly sensitive, time-critical inventory pull over at a rest stop and sit idle for 10 hours while the driver sleeps.
No, that would ruin the whole supply chain speed.
So what do they do?
Well, logistics planners essentially engineer the entire physical network around the driver's biological clock.
That's so cool.
It is. They will acquire land and build a relay terminal precisely 5.5 hours away from a major origin point.
Okay, so wait. A driver takes a loaded trailer, drives 5.5 hours to the relay terminal, and then they unhook that trailer, right?
Yep. They unhook it and immediately hook up to a different trailer that is headed back toward their home base.
And they drive 5.5 hours back, which completes a perfect 11-hour shift.
They call it a turn.
A turn, right. So the original driver sleeps in their own bed that night, and the freight continues seamlessly in the opposite direction with a fresh driver who just arrived from the other side.
It's a phenomenal workaround. But, consider the capital expenditure required to execute it.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
You're buying real estate, paving massive drop lots, securing the perimeter, and staffing a facility located strategically in the middle of nowhere, literally just to swap trailers.
Yeah, which brings up the inevitable financial reality of this entire system. Building relay terminals, operating break bulk hubs, buying fleets of tractors. How do transportation managers even begin to budget for an operation with such massive capital requirements and, fluctuating daily costs?
Well, it demands a really rigid separation of the transportation cost structure. You have to divide it into fixed costs and variable costs.
Okay, let's break those down.
So fixed costs are the baseline expenses that remain unchanged in the short term. It doesn't matter if a vehicle moves 10,000 miles or sits parked against a fence.
So this is like the initial capital investment of the vehicle, terminal facilities, licensing, insurance, stuff like that.
Exactly, plus taxes. But the most critical calculation for a fleet manager within this fixed cost bucket is depreciation.
Right, and the text actually details two specific ways to calculate that loss of asset value over time.
Yes, the straight line method and the reducing balance method.
Now, straight line seems like the obvious default choice just for pure simplicity.
It is simpler, yeah.
You take the purchase price of the truck, subtract the estimated salvage value it'll have at the end of its life, and you just divide the difference evenly across its expected years of service.
Right.
It gives this clean, totally predictable deduction for the balance sheet every single year. So why not just do that?
Well, it's predictable, but it's entirely divorced from reality. I mean, commercial vehicles do not lose value in equal linear increments.
Just like a regular car, right?
Yeah.
You drive it off the lot and it loses value instantly.
Exactly. They suffer massive depreciation the moment they are put into service, and then that loss tapers off as the asset ages. This is where the reducing balance method becomes vital.
Okay, how does that one work?
It applies a fixed percentage of depreciation to the remaining book value of the asset each year. So that results in heavy write-offs in the early years of the vehicle's life.
But why would a fleet manager voluntarily use the more complicated math? Are they just trying to front-load the tax deductions to free up cash flow early on?
Front-loading tax deductions is a major strategic advantage, yes, but it also aligns the book value of the fleet with its actual market resale value.
Oh, I see.
Because think about it, if a logistics company needs to liquidate assets or, say, secure financing against their fleet during an economic downturn, using straight-line depreciation might leave them severely underwater.
Right. They'd think their assets are worth millions more on paper than they actually are in the secondary market.
Exactly. It's a huge financial risk.
Okay, so fixed costs are really about managing capital and depreciation reality. But then variable costs are entirely dictated by usage.
Right. If the wheels aren't turning, you aren't paying these.
So we're looking at maintenance, oil, tires, tolls. But the text introduces a really fascinating nuance here when classifying human labor. It isn't just a blanket category.
No, it's not. The classification of driver wages depends entirely on the compensation structure. Well, if a company employs local or regional drivers on a basic salaried wage, meaning they guarantee them a set weekly income regardless of road time, that labor is classified as a fixed cost.
Because you pay it whether the truck moves or not.
Exactly. However, for long-haul drivers compensated on a per-mile basis, their labor shifts into the variable cost bucket. Every additional mile driven directly increases the payroll liability.
That makes total sense. But let's be real, the undisputed heavyweight of the variable cost bucket has to be fuel, right?
Oh, absolutely. Commercial trucks burn through diesel at an astonishing rate.
And unlike a driver's per-mile rate, which is locked into a contract, fuel prices are totally at the mercy of geopolitical conflicts, refinery capacities, global energy markets. It's constantly changing.
Fuel volatility is the ultimate nightmare for a transportation manager. I mean, carriers attempt to mitigate this by implementing fuel surcharges, which passes the increased costs down the supply chain to the shipper.
Right. You always see those surcharges tacked on.
But a surcharge rarely captures the entirety of a sudden price spike. So this forces sophisticated logistics operations to move way beyond simply paying at the pump.
What do they do instead?
They employ financial hedging strategies, like locking in diesel futures contracts to guarantee a set price. And they utilize dynamic routing algorithms that reroute trucks in real time to avoid high-cost fueling regions.
Wow. So the pressure of managing those fuel futures and depreciation schedules, it ultimately falls on the individuals orchestrating this whole network.
It does.
Which brings us to the key stakeholders pushing the buttons. Now, the primary transaction is relatively straightforward. The consignor, or the shipper, wants their goods moved quickly and cheaply.
Right.
The consignee, the receiver, wants their inventory delivered intact and on schedule. And the carriers provide the physical capacity to connect them.
The big three.
Right. But the M6SA text identifies two other massive stakeholders who never actually buy or sell the freight.
Yes.
The government and the public.
The government's role is foundational. Private companies do not pave interstate highways. They don't dredge deep-water seaports or manage national air traffic control grids.
Right. The state provides the physical arena where all this logistics happens.
Exactly. They also intervene heavily in regulation, managing safety standards like those hours of service rules we discussed, and occasionally regulating pricing to prevent monopolies from strangling economic growth.
Okay, so I understand the government providing the arena, but the general public being classified as a stakeholder, that seems like a stretch to me. If an average citizen isn't shipping pallets of consumer electronics or raw steel, why do they get a seat at the table?
Because the public acts as the ultimate counterbalance to unbridled industrial demand. I mean, consumers absolutely drive the system, right? Their spending habits demand the fast, cheap shipping that logistics networks provide.
True. Everyone wants their stuff tomorrow.
But simultaneously, the public pushes back through social and environmental advocacy. They are the stakeholders demanding lower emissions, strictly enforced noise ordinances near those PUD terminals, and, catastrophic disaster prevention regulations.
Ah, so it is the inherent tension between wanting next-day delivery and wanting clean air in your neighborhood.
Exactly. The public forces the industry to internalize costs, like upgrading to cleaner engines or avoiding sensitive routes that the carriers would otherwise just ignore to save money.
But navigating that whole web of environmental regulations, government tariffs, carrier contracts, that sounds impossibly complex for, say, a mid-sized manufacturer who's just trying to sell their products overseas.
Oh, it is, which is why the industry relies so heavily on intermediaries.
Like who?
Well, the text specifically highlights freight forwarders, which are a type of logistics service provider, or LSP. A manufacturer usually doesn't have the internal bandwidth to negotiate steamship allocation space, manage customs brokerage in foreign ports, and arrange drayage trucking on the other side of the ocean.
So a freight forwarder acts as like a high-level logistical concierge.
That's a great term for it. They consolidate shipments from multiple manufacturers to negotiate volume discounts with asset-based carriers, and they assume the massive administrative burden of global trade compliance.
So they basically allow the shipper to remain focused entirely on their core competency, which is manufacturing the product.
Right, while the forwarder manages all the geographic friction.
Okay, this brings us to the ultimate strategic decision for a company that actually has freight to move. How do they choose a carrier?
It's a big choice.
The text outlines a strict classification system for this, starting with the distinction between asset-based and non-asset-based carriers. Can you break that down?
Sure. An asset-based carrier has actual skin in the game. They own the physical tractors, the trailers, the distribution centers.
Okay.
A non-asset-based provider, on the other hand, such as a freight broker, owns nothing but a Rolodex and a software system.
Wow.
Yeah, they operate purely on commission, matching a shipper who has excess freight with an asset-based carrier who has empty trailer space.
Interesting. So when a shipper does decide to contract with an asset-based provider,
Yeah.
they generally utilize common carriers, right? Which the text also refers to as public carriers.
Yes, the common carriers are the logistical workhorses. They are legally obligated to serve the general public without discrimination, their liability is standardized, and their rates are often subject to regulatory oversight.
So common carriers provide exceptional flexibility because you're really only paying for the capacity you use.
Exactly. but they come with a severe strategic vulnerability. You are competing with every other shipper in the market for space.
Oh, right.
During peak seasons, capacity tightens, rates skyrocket, and your freight might literally be left sitting on a dock. Just consider what a company like Amazon did when they realized common carriers could no longer guarantee the capacity they required for their prime delivery promises.
All right, the text talks about this. They didn't just negotiate harder with FedEx or UPS. They built a private, dedicated fleet, acquiring over 10,000 trailers and leasing 92 cargo aircraft.
Yes, which is wild.
It is. Taking on that level of fixed overhead is an absurd capital risk. Leasing aircraft and buying 10,000 trailers pulls billions of dollars out of their core business operations.
It is a massive risk, but it buys them supreme control. A private or dedicated fleet completely immunizes a company from market volatility.
Because you're never scrambling for a truck during the holiday rush.
Exactly. And you have absolute control over the branding, the routing, and the customer experience. But as you noted, the financial burden is intense. You absorb all the maintenance, the driver union negotiations, the insurance liabilities, and that catastrophic depreciation of the physical assets we talked about earlier.
Right. So outsourcing to a common carrier eliminates all of those headaches. You dodge the capital expenditure completely.
Yeah.
Furthermore, there is a stark difference in how the tax code treats these two strategies.
Oh, completely.
Because if you own the fleet, you can deduct the depreciation of the vehicles. But if you outsource entirely to a third-party carrier, every single dollar you pay them for transportation services becomes a fully tax-deductible operating expense.
Right. It is a relentless calculation between maintaining operational control and mitigating financial risk. Every single supply chain manager must analyze their specific product margins, their customer service agreements, and their tax liabilities to find the exact right balance between private fleets and common carriers.
It's just incredible. Synthesizing everything we've pulled from the APCS text today, it is so clear that transportation defies this simple narrative of just, trucks driving on a highway.
It really does. It's so much more.
It's a highly engineered ecosystem. It requires leveraging trailers as rolling warehouses to avoid facility overhead. It demands optimizing local milk runs and staggering long-haul relay networks to cheat the biological limits of human endurance. And it's this constant financial battle, balancing front-loaded asset depreciation with the volatile global fluctuations of diesel fuel, all governed by a complex web of stakeholders negotiating the tension between economic speed and societal well-being.
Yeah, the main takeaway for anyone operating within or, even just observing this industry is to recognize the invisible architecture behind every single transaction.
Right.
The next time a product arrives at your facility or even just your front door, consider the break bulk sorting hubs that operated through the night, the complex tax strategies dictating who owned the trailer, and the relentless route optimization that made that final delivery mathematically viable.
I love that. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on just a brief concept that was mentioned in the text.
Oh, what's that?
So we discussed the massive infrastructure, the relay terminals, the hours of service regulations, the variable cost of per mile wages. All of that is built entirely around managing human limitations.
Right, the drivers.
But the text notes that major ports are already deploying unmanned autonomous vehicles, or UAVs, and automated guided vehicles to move containers without drivers at all.
Oh, yeah. AGVs are huge right now.
Right. So as that automation inevitably pushes out of the ports and onto the public highways, how does that rewrite the physics and finances we literally just explored?
It changes everything.
Exactly. What happens to the transportation cost structure when driver wages simply vanish from the variable column? And how drastically do routing strategies change when a commercial truck no longer needs to stop and sleep after 11 hours?
A whole relay terminal system would just become obsolete.
Right. But fundamental rules of this global chess game are about to change completely. And watching it unfold is going to be absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us.